Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today for our 30 on Thursday, Visualizing SharePoint List Data with Datazen Mobile Reports. Just a little bit about Protiviti before we get started. Protiviti is a global consulting firm that helps companies solve problems in finance, technology, operations, governance, risk, and internal audit. Our enterprise content management solutions is within the IT consulting group within Protiviti. Protiviti has over 70 offices and over 3,000 professionals worldwide. Our 30 on Thursday webinar series is a bi-weekly 30-minute webinar series where we talk all things SharePoint and enterprise content management. Our next webinar will be on April 28th, where we will be covering data loss prevention in SharePoint 2016. You can register for that webinar and see the full schedule at ecm.protiviti.com/webinars. We are offering free 1-hour introductory consultations for our on-demand SharePoint support solution. We provide everything from performance troubleshooting, system health checks, workflows, and database administration. If you're interested in scheduling a free 1 hour, you can schedule today by emailing us at ecm@protiviti.com. You can find out more information about our support service at ecm.protiviti.com. We are doing live tweeting today during the presentation. You can tweet us your questions and feedback at ProtivitiECM and use the hashtag 30TDatazen. Today's session is being recorded. An archive of all of our past sessions are on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ProtivitiSP. The recording of today's session will be up by tomorrow. You can use the question window in the GoToMeeting toolbar for all the questions during the presentation. We will be getting to the questions at the end. And again, you can tweet us using the hashtag 30TDatazen. Today's presenter is Brittany Kwait, a solution architect here at Protiviti. So let's get started. Brittany, I'm going to make you presenter, and you can take it from there.
All right, thanks so much, Julia. Just give me a moment here. I'm going to probably ask you to do a few checks because I'm going to be coming in and out of a presentation and then into a web server. So just make sure that we're able to see everything that I'm sharing. Okay, it should be coming up now. Thanks so much for everyone to take some time out of your day to join us and learn a little bit more about Datazen. Can you see?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, I don't know if you can see the panel or not. All right, so instead of saying let's get started, I'm saying let's get visual. We're going to do a few things here in this brief session. So the title is Visualizing SharePoint List Data with Datazen Mobile Reports. And let me break that down into each of the components that we will be discussing. The first is the Datazen Mobile Reports. What is it? Why am I interested in this? Why should you be interested in this? How is this different than the myriad other visualization tools that are there out in the market? So we're not going to dwell on that too much, but I do want to introduce the topic that way. Second, we're going to be taking SharePoint and making a list and putting some data in it. And then the third part is we're going to use items 1, the Datazen Mobile Reports, and the SharePoint list data, and then creating some visualizations. Lots to look forward to. So I do want to let you know I am not doing a deep dive on Datazen right now. There was another 30 on Thursday that was done by my colleague Peter some time ago. You can watch this on YouTube. It is called 20 Ways to Power Up Your Business Intelligence with Datazen, and he will walk through a few different ways that Datazen will help you quickly get started with visualization and some of the advantages that this tool has over others. So I recommend that you go to YouTube, give this a watch. Again, it's a 20-minute presentation, so I'm not going to repeat a lot of that here, but it is available to you as well as this presentation. All right. Now Datazen. So as I said, I'm not going to spend too much time on what it is, but definitely one of its advantages is being able to quickly and kind of seamlessly combine multiple data sources into let's say into tables, I guess is the best way to describe it, that your end users can report on. So here you've got your BI person. In that case, that's going to be me, Britt, the dashboard publisher. Typically, this is not somebody that's going to be a developer. This is going to be a information worker, probably at the same type of level of a power user in your site, somebody who really understands the data, who would be doing the report creation. Over here, then, we have the different data sources that are coming in. A few that I want to call out here. It does read Excel files, definitely an advantage. If you want to get started with this quickly, you could do it right after this webinar. You can read information from files. You can read information from databases. So if you have a SQL database or you have something up in Azure, you can use Datazen to be able to read that in. And then we've got SharePoint here. So Datazen then transforms some of that information and then provides it in 3 different formats, or as many mobile formats as you want to be able to access it. So we are able to look at it on a desktop, laptop, tablet, phone. So it's really powerful because you don't need to create visualizations for each one of those devices. Datazen will adjust to the screen resolution on each. So that's why we're calling it Datazen Mobile Reports, because they're ready to go wherever your users are. So for this presentation, we're just going to be looking at the SharePoint component and how we get the data in and how we get the data ready to be going out. So again, a little bit more about Datazen. This part is important because you might get a little lost along the way if I don't take a moment to explain this. So I went here to the Datazen website, datazen.com/start, and we can see a few of these different pieces, components that you'll need to be able to get started. So the first is the Datazen Enterprise Server. This is a server that's it's a pretty lightweight solution, but it will need its own server, or it could sit alongside something that's a little more light. And that's going to handle all of the information that is coming in from those different data sources and where we're going to set up some of those different views. The next part is the publisher. So the publisher sits on, as you can see here, these are for Windows, so it's an app that can be installed for your machine that will allow you to connect to the server to be able to build your visualizations from the data. Third, we have the viewers. So if you think back to the diagram that I showed you before, your viewers can consume Datazen content on any mobile device. And Datazen provides an app for all the devices that we have in our life. So if you're an Apple user, Android user, you've got a Surface tablet, you can go to the respective store and find there right now your Datazen viewer. And the Datazen viewer will also link up then to the Datazen Enterprise Server. And lastly, I just want to call out this one here. It's a bit buried, but there's also an HTML5 version of the reports. So if you don't have an app or you want to have a different experience, let's say you want your users to be able to consume the information, but it's sitting behind the firewall, getting the app to connect on their personal device, maybe that could cause an issue. So in that case, we will use this HTML5, which is included in the Datazen Enterprise Server to allow them to be able to connect. So here we can see the app being used on different devices, and what's really cool about this is it's all free. You're the publisher, don't pay for that app. The viewer and the HTML5 dashboard, don't pay for those apps. The asterisk here, and there's always an asterisk next to free, isn't there? Is that you would have already in your possession SQL Server Enterprise. So Datazen, I don't think I've mentioned this yet, is owned by Microsoft. This has been just about coming up on a year now that this has been part of the Microsoft suite, and certainly one of the reasons we're talking about it today and are excited about it. So I think that this cost of entry of SQL Enterprise is probably within the reach of most of the people on this call, and certainly most of the people that I work with on Datazen. So it's a very attractive option to be able to get started quickly with visualization just by getting these apps from the respective stores. So back to what we were talking about, getting visual. I'm going to start the demo portion of this. So hopefully, Julia, can you tell me if you can see You can see this sharing
Yep.
data?
Yep.
Perfect.
Looks good.
Thanks. So I have here a SharePoint site, and not much going on here because it's pretty boring. So let's go over here to the navigation. I've spent some time prior to this just uploading a bunch of metrics. So imagine that we're in a situation where I have metrics for different departments of my organization. I want to have them come in and report monthly. So how that's happening is beyond the scope of what I'm talking about now, but somehow metrics are coming in and every month they're getting reported up. So I want to be able to keep a history of all of my metrics over time and be able to know which department that they're linked to and what, of course, the value is, and probably some variances as well. So there's a number of calculated columns in here. Let's take a look instead of me just talking through it. So one of the nice things that I can do with SharePoint, and then we'll feed into Datazen, is this idea of calculated columns. So Datazen is the presentation layer in this case. We're going to be using it to present pre-transformed data. So I'm using SharePoint to do some of those transformations for me where I can. So for example, I have the name of my metric. Let's see, it's in here somewhere. Let's say metric value is here. And now I have a number of calculated columns that can tell me, okay, what is my metric contribution to the overall risk that I'm seeing in my organization? Who is the metric owner? Some basic information like that. And now getting into more calculated columns. Okay, what was my target? So my downtime should have been 99.8% within my IT organization. My actual downtime was 99.1. Is that acceptable? Is that not acceptable? Maybe we need to raise an exception. So we can use calculated columns to help run some of these statistics off our metrics. And what's great is that Datazen will pick those up. So I think we're probably familiar with SharePoint lists. I won't dwell on this much more, but I've got a lot here. I mean, and this list is going to contain thousands and thousands of rows eventually, and has, I mean, you probably got a glimpse of it, a few dozen columns in this list, and this won't be any problem for Datazen. So now I'm going to switch over to Datazen. So what you're seeing here is the Datazen server product. This is only accessible through the URL, similar to Central Admin. You can think of it like that. It's like Central Admin for Datazen, and it has its own permissions. The apps will connect to the server, and they are downloaded separately. For the Datazen server, you can download this right from Microsoft. So what I've done is I logged in, and this is the home page that I'm presented with. It tells me the name of the hub. So I had set this up before just for today's demo. This would be unique areas where you want your visualizations to be stored. So in this case, if I have different dashboards for discrete parts of my organization, I have HR reports and I have IT reports, and I don't want any cross-contamination between them, I could set up a unique hub for each. So in this one, I have one just to help manage these metrics. And then within each hub, and again, I only have access to one here, I have some different options of what I can create. So I can set up the users who can see these reports and the permissions of whether people can publish new reports, anything like that. So the default here is just set to everyone. The same thing with these different data sources. Let's go to data sources because that's really what we're interested in. So I set up this hub fresh. There's no data coming in here right now from anywhere. So we'll want to set that up. So to do that, I click New Data Connection, and now it's going to ask me for my data provider. So as I talked about in a slide earlier on, I can choose from different options, and they're all presented to me here. You can see there's a lot of different things I can connect to. Basically any database, numerous flat files, even XML. Now there's a special one in here just for SharePoint. There it is, Microsoft SharePoint list, and that's what we're interested in today, so I'll select that. And the options will change on the screen to tell me what it is that I need to include. So now I'm just going to give a name for this data connection set. So what I'm really doing here, this will make sense more in a moment, but I'm setting up a folder to which all of my individual data sets will belong. So I only need to set this up once, and then it's assumed that I'll use those same credentials throughout. So in this case, I'm just going to call this metric reports, almost the same thing as my hub. And then the server in this case will just be my URL to my SharePoint site. So I've just got that over here. Let me grab it. Okay, copy, put that over here. And it remembers me and my credentials, so that looks good. Now I'm going to say test connection, connection successful. One kind of gotcha on this, which I found a little bit frustrating, is if your credentials aren't correct, it's not going to tell you. So let me show you. Let's say I put the username in wrong, so I removed the T there, and I say test connection. It just tells me one or more errors had occurred. So there are numerous things that could be wrong here. My URL might not be right. I may have forgot to fill in a field, my username or password. I mean, who knows? And unfortunately, it's not going to give you any more information than this. So if you see this, it doesn't mean that there's a problem with the connection. It could be the credentials. So just be aware of that. It's kind of binary. It either works or it doesn't. Fortunately for us, this is working. So we shall carry on. Now I can decide who I want to have access to this. I haven't set up any other groups. I'm just going to select this for everyone. I could also put in individual users if I wanted to name names, but I strongly recommend using groups, same as we do in SharePoint. Now, one example of why I would want to have groups, if I have different groups for who's going to be able to publish information as opposed to who's going to be able to read information, consume it on those different mobile devices. I would probably have like metric reporting administrators and then metric dashboard viewers as different groups, but nothing's really sensitive here. We'll just leave this open up for everyone. Okay, so I had mentioned that we had this idea of a folder. So here we can see the folder kind of icon, so it helps you think about this as a folder. I haven't set up anything right now. There's no data coming in to the dashboard. So what I'll do now is click this metric reports, and now I'm again seeing a blank screen. I have no data views, but we will fix that. So I'll say new data view. And a data view in this case is a little bit like a SharePoint view, but with some key differences. And this is probably the worst part. And it's not bad at all. It's just knowing exactly what it is that you need to report on in advance. So I'm going to start with just 2 different views, and I think that will give you a good taste of how this is set up. So as I mentioned, I have a list of all of my metrics, and the metrics are always going to be in this list over time. So I want a historical view of all of my metrics. So I'm just going to call this one all metrics. Now the refresh frequency I'm going to set up here. This is going to be based on how likely the information is to change. Now you can force refresh on certain occasions, but this will be on the server side to bring in the latest information into Datazen. I'm going to set this up as being daily, and the default here is just every day at 1 a.m. It's fine. Next, we have this option to allow data caching. So that would be between those frequencies, I want the information to be able to sit in the app itself. So if I'm viewing this on an Android device, when I pull it up, it's going to give me the latest information, and then every time I look at it, it's going to be cached. Now this option here, personalized for each member, if you have usernames in the information, like if I'm a salesperson and I want to only see the sales that are for me, then I can use some filtering here to be able to pass my information along. Now this can be a little bit tricky because it would require that your Datazen is set up with single sign-on. Tricky, I shouldn't have said that, that's not really the case. But if you aren't using Datazen with single sign-on to Active Directory, then there might be that might not be an option for you. List name. List name in this case refers to the internal name of the list. So if you're new to SharePoint or a power user of SharePoint, every column has an internal name. That might be something that you picked up along the way. Every list also has an internal name, and I will tell you how to find that. Let's go back here. So you can see that my list name is monthly metrics with a space. Up here in my URL, I can see that it's monthly metrics with no space. Whatever you decide to call the list the first time around is most likely going to be the internal name of the list. So I recommend, as I do when you create columns, that you do not put any spaces in there. So we're just going to call this over here monthly metrics. And I see I'm almost out of time, so I'm just going to keep going here. Click next, and it's going to say, okay, I found the data. If it didn't find data, I would have gotten a not found error. So again, not the most helpful error because it sounds like your URL might be wrong, but not always the case. Okay, so I'm going to do this one more time, and now we're going to call this current metrics. Again, I'll set this up to be daily. So I'm going to this time include a filter, and the filter will take the format of a REST syntax. Don't let that scare you. There's tons of documentation online. It's not my area of specialty either, but once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad, and it looks something like this. So you put $, filter, and what this is going to do is take that information that we saw being returned before and pre-filter it so that when I go to create my report, it will be pre-filtered to that. So in this case, I'm going to put the internal name of the column. So again, it's the name that you used when you first created a column. So I'm just going to show you where to grab that if you're not familiar. I can go into the list settings. I'm going to filter on this field called view status. I know it's called view status equals published. And up here in the URL, it will tell you field equals blah, where blah is exactly that internal name 100% of the time. Whatever you see here is going to go in your query. So wherever view status, now it's a choice column, so I need to get the value of view status equals single quote. Oh, you gotta spell it right. Very important. Publish. All right, that looks good. We'll find out for sure. I click next, and it worked. Great. I'm not going to be able to confirm that it worked. I can't see that field on the screen over here. It won't let me scroll, but it will show me that I have 20 results, and I could map this back against what I have in my SharePoint view to confirm. I'll click Finish. Okay, and let's take this one step further and set up a data view that is for current metrics and for a particular business unit. So let me go back to the list. Let's try to pick something that will show up in that filter. Or let's even do, we'll say compliance risk. Okay, so new data view. Current compliance metrics, daily. Using the internal name here. And I'm just going to grab this one out of here. Here's my filter, which we saw. And we're going to just add a little bit to this. And we can do other things too with these filters. For example, if I wanted to say what are my top 5 best metrics or top 5 or 10 worst metrics, I can do that too with these strings. I can sort the results, and it's a little bit like Camel in terms of its capabilities, certainly not its syntax. So in this case, I'm going to get the risk factor name. Oh, equals compliance risk. Let me just double check that. Perfect, compliance risk. Looks good. So just creating an and there. Close that out. Fingers crossed, and we're good. Oh, and I didn't pick something that we could look at, but I'm sure it would have failed had that not worked out. So that's how we go ahead and wire up Datazen to these different views. Now I'm out of time, but in your Datazen publisher, these would be available for you to start creating reports, or however you wanted to with your different dashboards. So I want to make sure that we leave some time for questions, and I'll hand it back to Julia. Thank you.
Okay, great. We do have some questions coming in. First question is, can I combine data from multiple sources in a single dashboard?
Yes, you can. So when you're in a dashboard, how I have this folder here of SharePoint data, as long as all of this is within my hub, so it says metrics demo here. This is my SharePoint data because it's a SharePoint folder. But right here, I could say new data connection and have it connect to the database, Microsoft SQL Server, put in my credentials here, and then anybody that has access to this metrics demo would be able to create any reports from any combination of the data connections.
Okay, great. Which versions of SharePoint can I use with Datazen?
Well, you can use any version of SharePoint. There is a difference in Datazen for the different versions of Windows. So if you're on Windows 7, there's one version of Datazen. If you're on Windows 7 or prior, although I don't, it wouldn't be the same experience if it was on anything except Windows 7. If you're Windows 8, it's a different app, but you can use this with really any version of SharePoint because, as you saw, it's using what's called the list service, which has been supported in SharePoint all along. So it's more on the Datazen side, and you could get started with this as long as you have available space on your Windows server and a SharePoint site to connect it to.
Okay, great. Can you join the data sources on a join key, such as join orders with customers?
You cannot do that with SharePoint data. You would definitely be able to do that, I'll show you here, with these more database ones. So I can't show you because I don't have a server to connect this to. But what's really powerful, and I'll give you a preview, definitely the direction that Microsoft is going in with this product, you can put entire transform queries into your database. So I would recommend that you've got some stored procs on your database. You can run those and join your tables together and create your views, and then either point Datazen to those views in the database or do that in real time in Datazen with a more sophisticated query. You can join them, you can sum them, whatever you can write in a SQL statement, you can apply it in Datazen. But to go back to the original question, that will not work with SharePoint data. It needs to be pre-transformed.
Okay, great. That's all the questions that we have for today. Thank you, Brittany, for the presentation, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Our next webinar will be on the 28th, talking about SharePoint security, so we will see you all then. Have a great day.